today, and I want to thank CARE for inviting us to present the results of our research on the forces that shape U.S. Middle East policy. I think this is an important subject for all Americans and for all of the countries in the Middle East as well. Our presentation is going to be in two parts. I'm going to begin by summarizing the main arguments in our article on the Israel lobby, and then John will apply those ideas to the recent war between Israel and Lebanon and show that you can't really understand what happened there if you don't understand the political power of pro-Israel groups in the United States. Our bottom line, as many of you know, is that the influence of the Israel lobby has led to policies that are not in the U.S. national interest, not in the interest of other countries in the region, and ultimately not in Israel's long-term interest as well. We're going to try and limit our remarks to about 25 minutes apiece, so there is time for comments and questions when we're done. All right, what's our core argument? We make several big arguments in our paper. First, we just document the level of support the United States provides to Israel. About $3 billion a year in economic and military assistance each year. That's about $500 per year per Israeli citizen, despite the fact that Israel is a relatively wealthy industrial power. That aid is largely unconditional. It's not linked to Israeli behavior. It gets its aid when it builds settlements. It gets its aid when it spies on us, when it sells American high technology to countries like China, or when it attacks civilians in the West Bank, Lebanon, or Gaza. Israel also gets consistent diplomatic support from the United States. Since 1982, for example, we have vetoed 33 UN Security Council resolutions that were critical of Israel. That's a total greater than all of the vetoes by all of the other Security Council members put together. And finally, we take Israel's side in wartime, as John is going to discuss in some detail. Moreover, over time, we have tended to favor Israel's side whenever peace talks do occur. This led former U.S. negotiator Aaron Miller to state a few years back that the United States basically had acted as Israel's lawyer during the Oslo process, and of course has been even more one-sided under President Bush. Bottom line here is no other country gets the same level of economic, military, and diplomatic support. Now that support is usually justified by saying that Israel is a vital strategic asset or by invoking various moral rationales. We argue in our paper that this level of support can't be fully explained by either strategic or moral arguments. With respect to the strategic argument, Israel may have been a useful ally during the Cold War. It's possible to make a pretty good argument on that basis, but the Soviet Union is now gone, the Cold War is over, and we don't face any great power rivals. Today, Israel is said to be a key ally in the war on terror and in our efforts to combat rogue states like Syria and Iran. But there are several big problems with this line of argument. First, it has the causal logic backwards. We don't back Israel because we have a common threat from terrorism. Rather, we have a common threat from terrorism because we have been so closely tied to Israel. That's not, again, let me be very clear here, that's not the only reason. I am not saying that our unconditional support for Israel is the only source of anti-American terrorism, but it is a very important one. This was clearly stated in the 9/11 Commission report. This was the conclusion reached by separate studies by the U.S. State Department and by the Pentagon's Defense Science Board in the last couple of years. Numerous surveys of Arab public opinion confirmed their strong resentment at unconditional American support for Israel. And if you go to our enemy bin Laden and look at his statements, it's quite clear that our support for Israel has been an issue for him for quite some time. Again, not the only source of anti-American extremism, but it is an important one. Second, although the United States does have some differences with other countries in the region, Israel turns out to be the main bone of contention between us and them. For example, last year President Bush said we didn't want Iran to get nuclear weapons, not because it threatened to attack the United States, but, quote, because it would threaten our ally Israel. There are a lot of good reasons why the United States doesn't want countries in that region to get weapons of mass destruction. But we shouldn't overstate that particular danger. Remember, those states could not use any WMD without being destroyed in retaliation, and that also means that threatening to use them wouldn't be very credible either. Finally, Israel's own nuclear arsenal is one reason why other countries in that area want them, and it makes it harder for us to put pressure on states that are trying to get them. Third, and perhaps most important, Israel isn't much of a strategic asset for dealing with those problems. For example, it could not participate in the 1990-91 Gulf War or the more recent 2000 Gulf War. In fact, in both cases, the United States had to divert military assets to protecting Israel. The bottom line here is that unconditional support for Israel makes winning the war on terrorism harder, not easier. There isn't a compelling strategic rationale for the current level of U.S. aid.